the most common hacks in Web3 space. We will talk about the most common attacks that are specifically related to code. So basically, how did they steal my crypto? We will talk about the under and overflow attack, the reentrancy attack, and also the problems related to the approve function we've already seen in the module about smart contracts. Starting with the under and overflow attack. If you remember, in Solidity, there are different value types, and we were talking about signed and unsigned integers. The specific thing about an unsigned integer is that it starts from 0 and is also limited to a specific value. So it has a defined range. And what we will do, we will be playing with a value that's within this range, so our x. To make it easier not to play with those massive numbers that you can see here, we can say that the range is from 0 to 10. And what is the overflow attack? If we will provide a value higher than the range, so for example, not 10, but 11, and we will pass this value to a Solidity code, what Solidity will do is it won't use 11 because this is already extending the range that the variable allows. So the Solidity will start counting from 0. And as you can see, we go to the beginning and 11 turns into 1. This is called the overflow attack, so when we extend the range. The underflow attack is basically working in the opposite direction. So if we will provide value that is lower than 0, below the allowed range, like -2, Solidity will reverse and detract this value from the maximal possible value of the unsigned integer. So in our case, if we provided -2, our final variable value will be equal to 8 because 10 minus 2 equals 8. And why is it tricky? Why it can affect the funds of individual accounts? Well, the attacker can provide some code that will be updating the balance of the attacked account. And what they can do, they can try to update it to a negative value to say that the balance of this account will be now -5. What will happen is that Solidity will take this -5, so it will take 5, and detract it from the maximal possible value and set the account balance to, in this case, 5, if we think about the range. But of course, the range is much bigger, and the attackers can really manipulate the numbers and change the values that are assigned to specific accounts. Then we have the reentrancy attack. This is a situation where an attacker, again, is using a certain gap in a smart contract, a mistake, which was basically not to take into consideration malicious behavior of the traitor on the other side. So what we can see on the left side is the DAO, and it has 10 ETH within its treasury, so on its account. And the attacker is allowed to withdraw 2 ETH. If you remember the approve function to allow a certain address to withdraw the funds from the owner. So what attacker will do is that they will trigger a withdrawal of the allowed value, so the 2 ETH, and it will go to the smart contract, so to the code, to a function which allows to withdraw the funds. Within that smart contract, what will happen is that the withdrawal balance will then trigger a transfer so that the money can go to the attacker. And in a perfect world, what happens then is that the balance also gets updated. So the contract will know that it now stored 10 minus 2, so 8 ETH, and the attacker withdrew all the funds that he could, and the allowance is now at 0. However, the problem here is that at the moment of transfer, the attacker will use the situation. So when the account of the attacker receives the 2 ETH, What they do is that they have a malicious piece of code which will not only just accept that fund, it will not only accept the crypto, the transaction, but it will actually trigger something again. And the problem here is that once this action here, the transfer, is not finalized, so we don't get a response from the attacker like, hey, yes, I got the money, everything is okay, then the balance won't be ever updated. So what happens is that the DAO transfers ETH to the attacker, and the attacker, upon receiving the money, will say, withdraw again. So what happens now is that the DAO contract didn't update the allowance for the attacker or even the original balance of the entire account. And it still believes that it's still in this state. So when the ETH is transferred, the attacker triggers the withdrawal again to the same balance, theoretically. We know that the funds are already transferred. However, the contract is still in this state of mind. So it will send the 2 ETH again. The attacker is attacking again, so it's a withdrawal. And we stay in this loop until the entire treasury of the DAO is drained, because the contract never realizes that the balance has changed. And this is actually a very famous hack, the reentrancy attack, because it was performed on the DAO, one of the first biggest organizations, and it showcased a gap in the contract on the DAO side, which wasn't protecting the funds properly. And what should be done here is actually the balance should be updated already before the transfer happens. So the withdrawal is triggered. First, we update the balance. So we know, okay, the person that was supposed to get the 2 ETH, they received the 2 ETH. Then the funds are transferred. And in case it doesn't work, something goes wrong with the transfer, the balance can be reset again. So you say, okay, this didn't work. So actually, you can still take your 2 ETH. In this situation, as it's supposed to be updated after the withdrawal and after the transfer has been processed, the attacker can easily take all the crypto that is stored in that specific smart contract. Lastly, let's move on to the approve function. If you remember from the previous videos, this is the main function that allows someone, an address, to withdraw a specified amount on behalf of a user. And what are the problems with it? Well, if you approve someone to withdraw the money and you do it consciously, everything is okay. However, there have been a lot of cases of phishing email campaigns which were encouraging the users to click a link, click on a button, because the tool that this user is supposedly using was updated to the newest version, and in order to use all the advantages of the new tool, they should go through the update process. What happens is that when you click on that link, it will trigger a transaction, which will open in your wallet, you have your extension, and within that transaction, what was happening is that the approve function was called, which was allowing someone else to withdraw the funds, the crypto, from your account. So if you remember when I told you, read your transactions, this is the exact example that you should always have in mind. You can approve someone else to withdraw your money without even knowing that. The other case is a malicious behavior of the hackers, of the programmers, well, maybe not programmers, but other users of the network, who are trying to prioritize their transactions if they notice a certain update that the owner of another account has triggered. So let's have a look at how it may look like. Let's imagine that Benny said that Mandy can withdraw 10 ETH from his account, and this decision was validated, it was written into the blockchain and is set in stone. However, on the next day, Benny wakes up and he realizes that 10 ETH is a bit too much, and Mandy should be only able to withdraw 5 ETH. But if you remember consensus mechanisms and block validation, the transactions are not validated right away. Sometimes it takes some time. So this transaction is pending. And what happens is that Mandy noticed that Benny wants to change the approved amount. So what does she do? She will trigger a transaction with the withdrawal of the initially approved amount, and she'll try to prioritize it so that it goes before this update is actually processed. And she can do it, for example, by increasing the maximum gas fee that she's willing to pay for a specific transaction. So then the participants of the consensus mechanism will definitely go for the higher gas fees, because the gas fees are their rewards for mining the block. So what they will do is that they will put the transaction that Mandy triggered ahead of the transaction to update the initial approval. And Mandy gets 10 ETH. What happens then? As she withdrew the 10 ETH, finally the transaction that Benny triggered is approved and the allowance is decreased down to 5 ETH. So then Mandy can again withdraw the 5 ETH. As a result, she's the winner because she managed to withdraw not 5, not even 10, but 15 ETH together, because she was able to notice what Benny was doing with his account. And this can happen within the blockchain network. And as you can see, the consensus mechanisms, the rules that are controlling them are not perfect, and hacks like that can happen.